You ever get those goosebumps just thinking about a crowd, like really going nuts? I mean, 55,000 people chanting your name, the ground practically shaking. Now, put yourself in Ricky Hatton's shoes, right? This lad, working class pleb in Manchester, living that dream, it's electric. That's the kind of connection Hatton had. And today, we're diving deep into what made him such a phenomenon.
What's fascinating is Hatton's appeal, it went beyond just boxing. He embodied the spirit of Manchester, a city with a really strong working class identity.
He wasn't some, like, polished, distant champ. He was one of them.
Precisely. Growing up in a pub, family tied to Manchester City, he even had a trial with their youth football team. And these weren't just, biographical details for a boxing poster. They were threads woven into his whole public persona.
Okay.
Fans saw themselves in his journey. Struggles, aspirations, the lot.
It's like he was carrying that whole city on his shoulders when he stepped into the ring. But before the world titles and the roaring crowds, Hatton's path, it started with a real twist of fate, didn't it?
Absolutely. Hatton was already a decorated amateur boxer, multiple British titles, natural talent. But then came the 1996 AIBA Youth World Championships. He was dominating his semifinal match. 4 out of 5 judges had him winning.
Wait, so he was already on that pro track. Then what happened?
The scoring system, it only counted the judges' points in total, and that 5th judge scored it wildly in favor of Hatton's opponent. Total shocker. Later, it came out that this judge had accepted a bribe.
No way. So this wasn't just a loss. This was like a dirty blow that made him question everything.
Exactly. The experience left Hatton disillusioned with amateur boxing, really fueled his decision to turn pro at 18.
Wow. Talk about a sliding doors moment. That one corrupt judge accidentally shaped Hatton's entire career.
It's incredible, isn't it? And you wonder, did it fuel that fire in his belly even more? That relentless style he became known for.
Speaking of style, how did this young boxer from Manchester become the Hitman?
Now, you might think it's because he idolized Tommy the Hitman Hearns, which he did. But the story goes, he got that nickname on his very first day at the gym, 10 years old.
10 years old.
His coach saw him going at the heavy bag like a little whirlwind and thought, now there's a little Hitman.
I love that. You could just picture it. From that moment on, the name stuck. Couldn't have been more fitting.
And let's not forget that entrance music. Iconic. Blue Moon blasting as he walks out. Another nod to his beloved Manchester City.
Pure genius. Hatton understood the power of a good show, giving those fans something they'd never forget. But even with the nickname, the music, the raw talent, it takes more than that to climb the ranks in pro boxing. What were some of those early career-defining fights?
Well, right out of the gate, he's racking up wins. But that British light welterweight title in 2000, that was huge. Then he captures the WBU title, and get this, he defends it a record 15 times.
15. This guy was on fire. Okay, so he's a force to be reckoned with. But when did the world really take notice of Ricky Hatton?
It was the Kostya-Tszyu fight, 2005. That changed everything. That's where Hatton went from hometown hero to, global boxing icon,
Ah, the Tszyu fight. I remember this one being massive. Wasn't Tszyu considered practically unbeatable at that point?
He was. The undisputed king, light welterweight division. Held multiple world titles. Considered pound for pound one of the best, no question.
And Hatton took him down? What was the strategy going up against a legend like that?
Most experts, they thought Hatton had no chance. Too straightforward, they said. Too reliant on power. Couldn't compete with Tszyu's technical brilliance.
A grit over flash. Classic underdog story.
Exactly. He overwhelmed you with pure determination. Round 11, Tszyu's was exhausted, couldn't answer the bell for the 12th. TKO for Hatton.
Wow, what a statement. You can practically hear the roar of the crowd through the TV, even now.
Seismic upset. Suddenly, Ricky Hatton wasn't just a local hero, he was a global superstar.
And this win, it completely changes his career, right?
Absolutely. Unify the light welterweight titles later that year, beat Carlos Massa, it was the peak.
But like all great sports stories, there's drama ahead. And for Hatton, that next chapter, it unfolds when he decides to move up welterweight.
A natural progression for a lot of boxers, testing themselves against bigger guys.
Right, but not always a smooth transition. And for Hatton, it leads to one of his most controversial fights, that Luis Collazo match, 2006.
Now that was a brawl. Hatton won the WBA welterweight title that night, but a lot of people, they thought Collazo deserved it.
Yeah, some commentators, they felt Collazo was landing the cleaner punches. It was a slugfest, no doubt. Raised questions about whether Hatton's style, if it could cut it in this higher weight class.
Exactly, expose some vulnerabilities. This is a division with bigger guys, stronger opponents.
Which brings us to the mega fight, the one everyone was waiting for. Hatton versus Floyd Mayweather Jr., 2007. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
Let's talk about hype. Billed as one of the biggest welterweight bouts in history. Two undefeated fighters, contrasting styles. The boxing world was hooked.
And how could you not get swept up in that energy? Hatton brought a record 30,000 British fans over to Vegas, like a home game for him.
Electric. Even Mayweather, Mr. Composed, even he seemed to feel it, that pressure, and early on it looked like Hatton's relentless style. It might actually work.
Right. But then that point deduction in round 6.
Controversial, no other way to put it. The ref ruled Hatton hit Mayweather behind the head while he was on the ropes.
You could see the frustration in Hatton's eyes. Furious. It was like that moment just deflated him.
Turning point. Mayweather, ever the tactician, he capitalized on that frustration. Weathered the storm, took control, won by TKO in the 10th.
Crushing defeat for Hatton, physically and mentally. You could see it in his face afterward.
Brutal end to what had been such a promising chapter.
He did come back to win the IBF light welterweight title again after that, beating Juan Lozcano in front of that massive Manchester crowd, too.
Unforgettable night. Real reminder why those fans loved him.
But then comes the Pacquiao fight. Another devastating knockout loss.
And that one seemed to really take something out of him.
It's hard to watch, honestly, especially knowing what we know now about his struggles after boxing.
Right. This is where that whole Ricky Hatton narrative starts to take hold. And I think we have to be careful here. It's easy to use that nickname, flippantly, without really acknowledging how complex it all was.
Absolutely. It wasn't just about, fancying a pint, having a full English breakfast. It was a deeper struggle with his weight, his mental health, things people just didn't talk about as openly back then.
Yeah, it's easy to forget, right? Behind all the nicknames, the bravado, these are human beings dealing with a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. And for Hatton, that pressure, those brutal losses, it took its toll.
He grappled with depression, substance abuse, things he ultimately, found the courage to address very publicly.
And that's a real turning point, isn't it?
Yeah.
He could have just retreated,
Yeah.
Hidden those struggles.
Right, but instead, honesty, vulnerability. He sought help, went to rehab, and in doing so, he really shone a light on these mental health challenges, the ones so many athletes face.
Such a powerful message, especially for young men who often feel like they can't express those vulnerabilities.
Absolutely. And while we've made some progress recognizing mental health in sports, Hatton's story, it's a reminder we still have a way to go.
So true. Now, after stepping back from the ring, Hatton could have easily walked away from boxing. But that's not his style, is it?
No, he channeled his passion into a new role, mentoring and promoting the next generation of fighters.
Yeah?
Launched Hatton Promotions, found success guiding fighters like Janat Zakianov to championship belts.
That's fantastic. He couldn't stay away from the sport he loved, found a way to give back, share that experience.
And who could forget that image, right?
Right.
Him in Tyson Fury's corner during the Deontay Wilder fight. Two Manchester legends side by side.
Talk about a force of nature. And let's not forget Hatton's appearances outside the boxing world, too. His stint on WWE Raw, competing on Dancing on Ice, always had that playful side.
Never took himself too seriously. Up for a laugh, trying new things.
Exactly.
But at his core, Ricky Hatton always true to himself. That's what resonated with people.
The working class hero, the Hitman, with a heart of gold. He embraced those victories, learned from his defeats, and never stopped fighting. Even when the toughest battles, they were outside the ring.
And that's why, his story, it continues to fascinate, inspire, and even spark debate.
It makes you wonder, though, how would history remember him if he'd retired after that Pacquiao fight? Would that loss overshadow all his accomplishments, his impact on the sport?
It's a question, isn't it? Makes you think about legacy, how we define success and failure in sports and beyond.
One thing's for sure. Ricky Hatton's story, it's bigger than boxing. It's about resilience, vulnerability, staying true to yourself even when the odds are stacked against you. And that's worth remembering, no matter what your arena is.